Hey, this is Josh with Cultural Catholic, and I'm coming at you with one major story again. This time it is about Kenya, something we talked about a little bit earlier this past month. So let's jump right in. So, The Guardian reports on the 4th that Kenya's Supreme Court has declared Uhuru Kenyatta's victory in the presidential election last month invalid and ordered a new vote to be held within 60 days. The decision to nullify the result, a first in Kenya, sets up a new race for the presidency between Kenyatta and veteran opposition leader Raila Odinga. Analysts said it marks a watershed in the East African nation and set a unique precedent for the continent. The article actually goes on to explain that this was a first in African history for an incumbent president to have their election successfully challenged. Usually, whenever a president comes out of power, they either step down and someone else and other people run in their stead, or they're deposed through a civil war or a coup. But this is an interesting and good step forward for Kenya, especially since there seems to be a lot of dissatisfaction among certain groups in Kenya, because Kenya tends to vote along ethnic lines. And those on the coast and in the west don't feel as represented by the Nairobi government, as well as those in poorer parts of cities like Nairobi. They don't feel as represented by the central government as those those who support the Kenyatta government. Going on, the judges said the election commission failed, neglected, or refused to conduct the presidential election in a manner consistent with the dictates of the Constitution. They did not place blame on Kenyatta or his party. Kenyatta said he regretted that 6 people have decided they will go against the will of the people, but he would not dispute the judgment. The court has made its decision. We respect it. We don't agree with it. And again, I say peace. Peace, peace, peace. This is the nature of democracy. The judgment prompted scenes of jubilation among opposition supporters across Nairobi, the Kenyan capital. In the narrow streets of Kibera, an overcrowded shanty town that has long been a stronghold of Odinga and his National Super Alliance (NASA) coalition, crowds of people blew whistles, shouted, wept, and sang. Like I said, there's a lot of resentment among the people of Kenya towards the central government, and a lot of people do want some change, do want to have kind of the establishment shifted out of power, which is actually something that's been spreading around the rest of the world. A lot of people could say Brexit was a form of overturning the establishment. Same with Donald Trump being elected, Justin Trudeau winning in Canada, Macron winning in France. A lot of what was established politics in a lot of countries is being shifted, and so this is part of that general trend, and I really think it could be an improvement, because again, even though it's anecdotal, I did have a friend who I worked with who's from Kenya, and she felt not as well represented by the Kenyatta government, but this seems to expand upon that anecdotal evidence. Going further, concerns were raised before the election when the official who oversaw the electronic voting system was found tortured and killed days before the vote. The Electoral Commission has said there was a failed attempt to hack the system as votes were being counted and compiled. Observers saw last month's election as the final act of a dynastic rivalry between the families of Kenyatta and Odinga that has lasted more than half a century. The candidates' fathers, Jomo Kenyatta and Jaramogi Odinga, had been allies in the struggle for independence from Britain, but later became bitter rivals. And the article finishes about how the two main candidates are from pretty large ethnic groups, and how they built coalitions with other influential communities, and how it's typically along ethnic lines that voting occurs, and based on that ethnic-based voting, it causes the tension that occurs in the country. For instance, in 2007, when Kenyatta won again, and Odinga lost. When Kenyatta won and Odinga lost, there was a lot of violence, and there was actually ethnic-based violence that killed around 1,100 people. So there is tension there. It's a democracy, but it's not a perfect democracy. And they are trying, and it appears that this is a step forward. And Al Jazeera on the 4th also reported. No, wait, the Guardian article was on the 1st. The Al Jazeera article that I'm about to reference was from the 4th. It explains that Kenya's Electoral Commission has announced that the country's new presidential elections will take place on October 17th after the Supreme Court overturned the result of last month's poll that declared President Uhuru Kenyatta the winner. A fresh presidential election will be held on the 17th of October 2017, said a statement released on Monday signed by Wafula Chebukati, chairperson of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. This is in conformity with the Supreme Court decision annulling the presidential election held on 8th August 2017. So a little bit of explanation about the IECB in Kenya. Odinga actually has a lot of issues with the IECB, and the man who was found tortured and murdered worked for the IECB. And there was speculation that his murder may lead to some irregularities in the voting, and there may have been. They say the perfect way for a strongman to win a presidential election isn't to have 98%, which a lot of strongmen in Central Asia, East Asia, in Central Asia, Eastern Europe, South America, and other places where there are strongmen in power, they typically have 98% of the vote. The perfect way for a strongman to win the vote and make it seem legitimate is to have 54% of the vote. So Kenyatta ended up with 54% of the vote, which raises questions on whether or not it was illegitimate. Again, they'll just have to follow the court's ruling and have the new election. Hopefully things end out well, and hopefully the will of the people is listened to in the near future. This is Josh with Cultural Catholic signing off.